In the Eyewitness Newsroom, coming up tonight at 6. It's now official. Earl Weaver is returning to manage the Baltimore Orioles for the remainder of the season. Joe Altobelli has been fired. The word came at a news conference late this afternoon.
Earl Weaver has agreed to return as manager of the Orioles for the balance of the season, replacing Joe Altobelli. Contract agreement was reached at 12:30 this afternoon at Edward Bennett Williams' office in Washington. At the end of the year, the managing situation will be re-examined and a decision made relative to
Scope Joe Altobelli has managed his last game for the Birds while Earl Weaver is warming up and heading back to 33rd Street. When you June 13th, 1985, well, the waiting is over.
Just less than an hour ago, Orioles owner Edward Bennett Williams named Earl Weaver the new boss of Birdland.
What is it about Earl Weaver? Earl Weaver just has the greatest record of any living manager in baseball. It's not 600, but it's very close to 600. There's no one alive who's close to that. So we went for the best possible resource that we could get.
John Saunders is at Memorial Stadium now, where word that the Earl of Baltimore is coming back has everyone buzzing, right, John?
Yeah, it has everyone buzzing, including umpires all around the American League. They're all threatening to hand in their resignations. The man who made an art form out of getting tossed out of baseball games is back to haunt them. But the reason Edward Bennett Williams said he brought this man back, of course, was his winning percentage. 13 times in 15 possible chances, Earl Weaver finished either first or second. 6 divisional championships, 4 pennants, and 1 World Series championship. To sum this guy up, he is a winner. He may get tossed out of a few games, but he does it to motivate his players. And motivate his players he does. No manager in the history of the game has been able to get so much out of so little. To get marginal players to become champions, to get championship players to rise even further above that. So Earl Weaver is back. Joe Altobelli is out, and we'll have more on that later.
Okay, John, he is colorful. Thank you. Slow.
Well, depositors at Merit Commercial.
Tomorrow night, and we'll be back a little while with Chris Thomas, some of the players, and Ripken, who will manage tonight. Rod and Dave.
Thank you, Vince. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Durian.
And I'm Rod Daniels. Here are some of the other things coming up next on News 11, live at 5:30.
the search for a office in Washington.
Earl will not manage tonight because of a prior commitment, but Cal Ripken Sr. will. And, of course, we'll have complete team coverage of Earl Weaver's return to the Baltimore Orioles coming up tonight at 6 on Eyewitness News.
Sorry about relieving Joe Altobelli. It was a difficult decision, but we did not like the direction in which the club seemed to be headed and decided that a change was necessary. At the same time, we felt that Earl, with his knowledge of the club, the organization, and most of the players, as well as his past record as a winner, was the most appropriate choice to replace Joe in this situation.
Royalty is returning to Baltimore. The Earl of Baltimore, Earl Weaver, is replacing Joe Altobelli as the boss of Birdland for at least the rest of this season. 90 minutes ago, after days of rumor and no comment, News Scene 2's John Saunders was at Memorial Stadium when the official word finally came down, and he joins us now live. John?
Jackie, they say just for the rest of this year, Earl Weaver had stipulated that if he ever did come back to manage in the major leagues, he would do it on a year-to-year basis, and that's the way they've done it. They'll reevaluate the situation at the end of the year. Now, much of the speculation that was made leading up to this caused the Orioles a little bit of embarrassment. As a matter of fact, always been called a class organization. Even Joe Altobelli questioned that earlier today. And we spoke with Hank Peters and the Orioles owner Edward about just how they approached the situation. They put much of the blame not on themselves, not on the Orioles or the class organization that they are, but on the media.
General Manager Hank Peters made the manager just public at a news conference late this afternoon. Vince Bagley and Chris Thomas are live at Memorial Stadium. They were there, they've been there much of the day. Gentlemen, to recap for us.
That's right. We need another lunch. We've been here a little while. But the announcement came really in Edward Bennett Williams' office in Washington. The decision made at 12:30. And at 3 o'clock today, they told Joe Altobelli that he wouldn't be the manager anymore. He had actually been at Bowie for a couple of races and been called back to this scene. It's been not the kind of scene that we like.
No, it hasn't, Vince. First of all, about Weaver, because the fans want to know mostly about Earl. Strangely enough, although he's the new manager, he won't be here till tomorrow. He has a prior commitment.
Can you imagine a prior? I mean, what's he doing? I don't know. Is anybody graduating? I know he's not getting married.
Might be going to dinner with Tom Marr. I don't know, but
anyway, he's going to be here tomorrow night. But in the interim, and again, Cal Ripken Sr. will run the club.
And you'll talk to him a little bit later. Most of the questions, at least the early questions in today's press conference, dealt with the way that the entire Joe Altobelli case was handled. And General Manager Hank Peters reacted angrily, bristled, in fact, when it was suggested that the firing of Altobelli had been handled without class.
Number one, I would dispute your statement that it was not handled in a class way. Relieving a manager of his duties cannot be handled in a painless or a graceful manner. It's a very difficult thing to do for us personally. It's a difficult thing, naturally, for Joe Altobelli to have to accept. Unfortunately, the people in your profession, the media, do a lot of speculation, and you feed on rumors and report them as such. We can't control that, nor can we stop you from doing that, and that's what happened in this case. It was unfortunate. Perhaps Earl Weaver's presence in Baltimore at this particular time, which was strictly coincidental, was unfortunate because it added to your speculation.
Despite what you said about what happened yesterday, Joe Altobelli is quoted today as saying, "I thought this was a class organization, but I guess I was sadly mistaken." Given that phrase, and considering that he swung in the wind in Detroit yesterday, not knowing what his situation was, wouldn't it have been more fair to have told him at that point what his status was?
I have two comments. Number one, I'm very sorry that Joe feels that way. I really am, because I like him, and nothing that he says now or will say in the future is going to change my respect and my affection for Joe Altobelli. I thought by my lights the fairest way, and Hank Peters thought that the fairest way to do this was face-to-face, not to discharge someone over the telephone. And the first time that we could see him, we came over here and saw him. As soon as we had a replacement, we came here and we told him.
Well, with respect to Mr. Peters, I disagree with him. I think that, considering he has an executive jet, that Hank Peters should have been on that plane yesterday and told Joe Altobelli he was no longer the manager.
You were on the 2:15 plane to Detroit. You got there in plenty of time for the game. I have to agree with you.
Yeah, I don't think it was handled well. But that's now in the past, and you have to look to the future. Earl Weaver was a brilliant manager here for many years, Vince, and they're hoping he can do it again.
Well, they want it to happen beginning tomorrow night. They want it to happen tonight under Ripken, and then Weaver comes back tomorrow night. We'll be back in a little while talking to Cal Ripken.
Dave?
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much. We'll check in with you in a few minutes. Chris and Vince, thank you. Rod?
In other news of this day,
Junior guiding the club. Right now, let's go into the stands with Andy Barth, who has more on the situation. Andy?
John, I've always felt that one of the resources we didn't take proper advantage of was the ushers here, because after all, they get to see more games than any of us do, and some of them have been here for a good long time. I've gotten two gentlemen who knew Earl Weaver long before he was the Earl of Baltimore. I mean, they were here before he was. What do you think it's going to mean? How do you feel about seeing him come back?
Well, I'm kind of happy to see him back. I think he'll motivate the team. He's an inspirational leader, and he knows how to utilize his bench.
More so than Joe Altobelli?
Yes. Joe's a fine man personally, but he just can't use that bench like Earl did.
All right. You all also get to be in contact with the fans. Riley, what did you find over on your side on first base where they sit?
Well, the fans on first base side felt that the motivation wasn't there, and the players that were here this year were the ones that should take us out of April's atmosphere into great things, and they had just felt like somebody had to do something, and the last homestand, it was highly visible that everybody was in that content.
You were hearing a lot of people who wanted Joe to go.
Yes, that was the main thing they were all saying, but I, for one, don't want to see anyone go. But if you're going to make a move, and it's for the betterment of the fan, the team, and everything, I think they did the right thing.
All right, thanks very much. You think he's going to bring you another World Series?
Definitely.
All right. One man who also has known Earl Weaver for a long time is groundskeeper Pat Santarone. How do you feel about your friend and business partner coming back?
Well, I like Joe very much, and we were very good friends. But I think in baseball, it's pretty tough to look back, and I think we better look forward here to what we have. Earl coming in and trying to turn this thing around, I think he's capable of doing it, and so I'm pretty glad for that.
You and he had some contests in the past in the tomato patch. You going to start that rivalry up again?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to come in here obnoxious as heck about my tomato plants that I have down there and tell me how much better he can do, and he's going to have to prove it to me again.
All right, that's only one of the competitions we'll watch. Thanks very much. So obviously people here are interested, at the very least, in having Earl Weaver back. Jackie?
Okay, thank you very much, Andy. Tonight at 11:30, News Scene 2 Sports will present a special recap of today's changes, new boss in Birdland. Talk of changes in the Oriole camp may have dominated the news today, but there is other news to report tonight.
Lunchroom. The manager tonight will be Cal Ripken Sr., then Earl Weaver becomes the manager tomorrow. Vince will talk to Cal Sr. in just a moment.
Vince, and a man who truly is caught in the middle of this whole switchover from Altobelli to Weaver is Cal Ripken Sr., who tonight, of course, is the interim manager. Vince?
Absolutely caught in the middle, and this happened to you before, and I wonder if you're a 29-year man in the organization. You want to be a 30-year man?
Yeah, I'd like to be a 30, 35. How about 40?
That's good. Rip, you got a great attitude about it. What about it, though? Doesn't it annoy you that they come to you second thoughts?
No, I don't get annoyed, Vince. I don't get upset about things. I let things happen, and the way they happen, you go from there. I don't believe that you can do anything about things. Baseball is a funny game, and things take place. You can't worry about those things. You go ahead, and it happened. Now let's water over the dam. Now let's go play ball. Let's go do the job. I have to go out here and try to do a job tonight in another capacity, and I certainly am going to try to do the best job I can. And I want to win tonight. I want to win every night, and so do these ball players out here. They come out every day to do a job. Unfortunately, things don't always work out that way.
Well, you feel as though your career is fulfilled, though, if you don't someday manage in the big leagues?
Well, I never even thought about whether it's fulfilled or not. Anytime I can put this thing on, every day and come out here with these young guys and hit those fungos and throw a little batting practice and catch that ball, I'm tickled to death. And I'm tickled to death that I have a job in that coaching box. I think Earl's going to leave me in the coaching box. I'm not sure. He might fire me. I don't know.
And what is the attitude pretty good in the clubhouse about Earl coming back among the coaches?
Well, I really haven't had a chance to talk with the coaches. We've had a pretty busy schedule here today because we all came in early to try to get things organized for tonight's ball game, and we really haven't had a chance to talk. We had a meeting with Hank, and then we had a meeting with the players in here. So I don't foresee any problems or anything else. As I say, that's water over the dam, and that's what I told the ball club in here. We've got to go out and play a ball game, and we want to go out and do the best job we can. We've got 107 left.
Okay, go get him, and Chris is going to come in here and say hello.
Okay.
Good luck tonight, and we'll be seeing you soon. What a great attitude, huh?
Yeah, it's terrific. He's a good organization man. The Orioles generally have him. Good luck, Rip.
Go get him.
Okay, the one other question, of course, Vince, will be any player moves before the trading deadline later on this week, and Hank Peters kind of danced around that one a little bit today, but Alan Wiggins' name has been brought up. Hank would only say that he had talked to Wiggins and his attorney. He had not worked out at the ballpark, and he was just one of many possibilities.
Okay, well, we wondered about Alan. He has a terrible drug problem, and people say if he's physically okay, why shouldn't he be able to play? And you say that there's some other considerations that might not be able to allow him to be an Oriole.
Quickly, I don't think they're worried. If they're convinced he's clean, they're willing to sign him. The problem with Wiggins is he has many clauses in his contract that the Orioles traditionally have never accepted.
Okay, we got to run. We'll get back, and we'll talk some more about it. We got a lot of talking in the next couple days. Okay, Dave?
Okay, gents, we'll talk to you a few more minutes again. Thanks very much. Rod?
Who's live at Memorial Stadium for more? John?
Jackie Earl will come in and take over tomorrow. He'll hold a press conference sometime tomorrow morning. For tonight, it will be Cal Ripken Sr. We'll have more on that in the news at 6 o'clock. Right now, let's check in with Sports Check and catch up on what's been going on the field. First, let's go to Detroit last night. Joe Altobelli's final game as manager. The Tigers struck early in this game. Johnny Grubb with a single. Gibson and Parrish came in to score. It was 3-0, but then Fred Lynn came back and gives the Orioles 2 runs. This in the second inning, a 2-run home run, his 9th of the year, but that was the last hit that Dan Petrie would give up for the rest of the game. 3-2 at that point. Mike Boddicker hangs one up here, and Lou Whitaker takes it deep. A 3-run home run, his 8th of the year, 6-2, and Joe Altobelli's final game is over. The Blue Jays, meanwhile, kept on winning. 4th inning, this first hit off Steve bounces and hits Jesse Barfield in the face. Ricky Henderson with a good wheels gets all the way around to third while Barfield lays prone on the field. Hit in the face. He did manage to come back to They stuffed his mouth with some cotton to stop the bleeding, and he was able to continue. The 10th inning, pinch hitter Rance Mullinex hits a home run, and he needed it because if they come back, the Yankees leading most of the way. That error scored another run to make it a 2-0 count. But as I say, 10th inning, this is Rance Mullinex. A solo home run, and 3-2 was the final. The Blue Jays win it again. They're now 8 games up over the Orioles. Milwaukee against Boston. Frank Howard was in subbing for George Bamberger. Bamberger, though, was seen here today at Memorial Stadium. 4 runs in the second. Hoffman with a looper here. Manny can't handle it. 2 come in to score, and it's now a 4-0 game. On to the 8th inning. Barrett with a double. Buckner and Dwight Evans come in to score, and it's 7-1. 7-2, the final score in that one. In the National League last night, the Cubs against the Expos. 4th inning, it's already 1-0 for Montreal. Herm Winningham, one of those guys they picked up from the New York Mets with a single. It scores Tim Wallach. Montreal's on top 2-0. That's the way it would wind up. David Palmer held the Cubs scoreless for 6 2/3. Ryan Sandberg was 1 of 8 on the game. Now at the U.S. Open, which began today in Michigan, Andy Bean.
Coming from 33rd Street. That life is unfair and managing baseball is unstable, we already knew. It does make you wonder, though, whether it makes sense to fire somebody because he has a couple of off weeks on the job, or because the people he supervises have a couple of off nights. Joe Altobelli has done nothing wrong, and he continues to be what he has been for the past 2.5 years, as Williams well knows, through good times and bad. Steady, calm, reliable, uninspiring. But now comes Williams, who, because of his impatience or temperament, feels he can't afford to wait for the team to hit its stride and start to play better. And he offers Earl Weaver the chance to come back to the scene of his triumphs and go back on his promise that he had managed all he wanted to and wouldn't hang over the shoulder of his successor. Earl isn't a very patient man either, which may explain some of his appeal to Williams. Now, of course, it may all work. Weaver may be just the shot in the arm or kick in the pants the team needs, and Williams may look like a genius. He didn't get where he is by being patient and gentle. The Orioles, on the other hand, didn't get where they are by acting like the Yankees. Is all this fair? Does it make anybody look good? Does it make you love the Orioles? Does it make you comfortable to think the city's baseball future is in Ed Williams' hands? Probably not. But one other question. Since this is apparently life as it really is there much of anything anybody can do about it? Probably not. I'm Andy Barth, at large for News Scene 2.
Details of his new contract. 41-year-old Gukas was the front runner to replace Billy Cunningham as head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. Of course, we've been showing you the men's major golf event.
The way he was treated, saying he thought the Orioles were a class operation, but he guessed he was wrong. But he was back at the stadium this afternoon to hear Edward Bennett Williams tell him it was over, and Earl Weaver was taking over as skipper of the team. News Scene 2's John Saunders and Scott Garceau have been following the story for days and join us with a live update from Memorial Stadium. Gentlemen?
Sally, we're joined by John Lowenstein, who's also been following a story that started as rumors. As a matter of fact, Edward Bennett Williams blamed us, and you've joined our ranks now for causing all of the rumors.
Yeah, I still blame you.
But the rumors turned out to be true. Your reaction, of course, isn't going to be the same as if you still had the uniform on, but how do you feel about Earl coming back?
Well, of course, Earl is a less social, less civil animal than most managers are. And can he provide a spark or the necessary motivation that Edward Bennett Williams seems to think is required here? Well, nobody really knows for sure. I think probably from a player's standpoint, if you have to motivate and provide enthusiasm for hundred thousands of dollars per year players, then those players should probably seek out also a more social and civil environment in which to conduct their activities. But of course, I don't think that's the case here with the Orioles. I think they are very familiar with Earl. They know what he's capable of doing. They know
Winningest manager in Orioles
rules the game. Can he be the savior? Well, Edward Bennett Williams hopes he can. However, as I stated so eloquently before, as a notable English prime minister once said by the name of Herbert Henry Asquith, he said, quote, "Wait and see," unquote.
Quick question. From what you just said,
yes.
not Joe Altobelli, a lot of people say Joe Altobelli wasn't the kind of guy that gets you fired up. You're telling us that's not important.
Of course it's not important. I think being laid back, no, Joe was not laid back. He was more casual than most managers are because I think he probably felt as confident as the players. I think once you lose some of the on-the-field respect of a manager. I think you lose it in the clubhouse and you lose it on the field.
Did the bullpen get Joe Altobelli fired? The inability of the bullpen to close some games recently?
Well, the unresponsiveness of the players in any professional game usually will get the manager canned. And of course, it's no different here in baseball. And you know the old cliche, you can't fire all 25, right? Well, why not fire half of them and then get 12 others or 13 others and see how it works out? Of course, Edward tried.
There's no question about the fact that when Earl decided to pack it in to retire a couple of years ago, not everybody was too disappointed about it. Players' reaction right now, are there going to be some guys upset he's back?
I'm not so certain that all the players hated to see Earl go, because everyone enjoys a good show every now and then. And I think every now and then came more often than probably some of the players liked. I think, you know, you can only take so much of a good thing. However, will Earl be the same kind of fellow? I think so. I don't think anything will change, and I think the players respect that.
Okay, and I think the umpires around the league are not so happy to hear about that. We'll be back with more in the Sportscast. Thanks.
It's talked about quite a bit. It's one of those things that the decision was made by Mr. Williams and Mr. Peters that Mr. Weaver would come in to manage the ball club. That's the decision that was made, and we're going to abide by that decision.
No hard feelings?
No, I don't have any hard feelings. I still have a job out here in this coaching box, and I'm tickled to death about that.
A lot of people are saying that what this team had been lacking was somebody need to spark this ball club, and that is why they brought Weaver back. Do you agree with that?
Well, I really can't answer that because, first off, you've got to go out and hit, and you've got to catch the ball, and you've got to pitch it and do those things. If you need a spark, Earl Weaver certainly is a guy that bubbles with enthusiasm, and he bubbles with winning desire. And if that's the answer, then they've got the right guy in an Earl Weaver coming in.
Okay. Good luck to you tonight, Cal. Thanks very much for being in 83 here live. Richard, and now that's the story. We'll have more coming up in about 30 minutes from now. We'll talk to Rick Dempsey, the player's perspective of what he thinks about the return of the man they call the Lord of Baltimore.
All right, Paul. Thank you. That's Paul Sherry reporting live on Earl Weaver's return to the Orioles. Paul will have more on the O's later in Eyewitness News.
Well, of course, this town has been abuzz with talk about Earl Weaver, Altobelli, and the Orioles over the past couple of days. In the first of our team coverage on the Orioles, Don Williams listens to what the fans have to say.
No, I'm sorry, there's not been a decision at this time. Thank you.
Receptionists at Memorial Stadium were busy this morning as hundreds of calls flooded the switchboard. Journalists from every medium were camped out at the stadium trying to get an audience with Oriole manager Joe Altobelli, amid reports he was on the way out and former Oriole manager Earl Weaver being called out of retirement.
He's on as good as his players are, and just because they're losing doesn't mean that he's not a good coach. You know, so I'm for both of them, really. I just hate to see Joe go.
Outside in the ticket lines, though, some fans were ecstatic about the possible return of the popular Earl Weaver.
Earl Weaver's the man in Baltimore, and I used to live here, and I guess the thing about baseball now is you got to win.
He's led them before and let them always place high in the standings and all that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it might help the team, just give the players a shot in the arm, just give them a change of scenery and somebody new there, and it might just bolster them up.
But as Altobelli left the stadium, he wasn't talking, so some so-called well-informed rumors remained just that, rumors. And if you needed proof positive that something indeed was going to happen here today, we found it. This artistry was hanging here in the Hit and Run Club underneath the television. And instead of saying, come to Birdland, it says, come to Earlland. At Memorial Stadium, Don Williams, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
He was in a meeting yesterday.
This is Beverly Burke reporting. Although anxious, Mrs. Earl Weaver was not waiting by the phone at her daughter's home for word from her husband. In her heart, she knew better.
Well, I think there's a great possibility that he might be the manager.
Would you be happy if he managed again?
Oh, yeah. I love Baltimore, and of course my daughter lives here.
In her mind are some of the changes the Weavers have considered.
Where are we going to live? Am I going to stay here, you know, when he goes on road trips? And, you know, all those little things.
For Mrs. Weaver's daughter's neighbors, the Altobelli-Weaver issue was the hot topic.
I feel sorry for Joe Altobelli. I liked him as a person, but as a manager, I think he was just a little too soft-hearted, and I think Earl will put the blade to him and kick a few tails.
I do like the Orioles. I don't really care who manages them as long as they play.
I feel sorry for Altobelli. You know, he's not the whole team. Because the Orioles are losing, it's not his fault. Only, you know.
There's a lot of concern for seeing a winning Orioles team again, and more than a dash of optimism that the seemingly impossible can be done.
I think they'll go to the World Series if Earl comes back, though.
I'm sure Baltimore, you know, is the place he'd want to be.
Beverly Burke, Channel 13 Eyewitness News.
So it is Earl Weaver's spotlight once again, and it shines on the field of play for a change, and not on the Orioles front offices as it has over the past 48 hours. And now it's time to play ball.
Life goes on elsewhere in
Visitors cannot
a withdrawal ban.
Some personal commitments have kept him away from the ballpark today, so Cal Ripken Sr. will take over. The announcement was made earlier this afternoon when owner Edward Bennett Williams and general manager Hank Peters held a press conference, and both commented as to why they made the change.
Well, I think that we did not have the kind of leadership that we expected to have from the manager. And I say that reluctantly because I like him so much. I do not think that we had the kind of leadership on the field that we have traditionally become used to in the Oriole organization. And because we didn't have that, we made the change.
Each individual will have their own personal feelings about Earl. Earl never tried to run a popularity contest with his players, and I don't think he will this time. He's always been dedicated to winning and willing to make the decisions that are needed in order to have a winning ball club, and I think he will continue that.
We're joined now by the man who will be running the ball club today on a one-day interim basis till Earl Weaver comes back, Cal Ripken Sr. Cal, first of all, your reaction to it, working for your old boss again.
Well, as I've said before, John, you know, when Earl Weaver retired, we were very fortunate to get Joe Altobelli to manage our ball club here in Baltimore. And now Mr. Williams and Mr. Peters have made a change, and I think that we're very fortunate in getting Earl Weaver back here. Earl's a fine manager, Joe's a fine manager. And right at the present time, when you can operate with Earl Weaver running a ball club, I think that we're very fortunate.
You're the type of man, and you try and instill this in your players, and that's come to play no matter what the adversity, no matter what is going on. Do you think the players can shake something like this off? Very many of them were very close to Joe, and some of them weren't that crazy about Earl.
Well, I definitely do, because I think that this ball club is structured and made up that way. At 7:35, when the game starts, no matter what's happened during the course of the day or the evening or the night before or whatever, for example, if we've gone out and gotten beat the night before and gotten beat badly, the next day at 7:35, these guys are ready to go again. And I'm sure that these guys are going to go out and play the game the way they know how to play and to the best of their ability. That's all going to be water over the dam. There isn't anything you can do about that, and they're going to go out and concentrate on playing the ball game against Milwaukee tonight.
The way in which the situation was handled, a lot of people think it wasn't handled in an Oriole fashion, but I guess a lot of that has to do with the fact the team was on the road, and it put the ownership in a very difficult situation.
Well, I really can't answer what had happened in the whole structure of everything. However, it did happen. And I think that you have to look at things and say, well, that has happened, and we can't do anything about that. We have to handle the situation at hand. And I was very pleased with the way Joe handled everything. I know that it was a precarious situation for him, and I felt sorry for Joe in a lot of ways in some of the things that he had to say and do yesterday. But I felt that Joe handled everything very well, and as I say, it happened that way, so you have to handle it that way.
Quick question, we talked about this before we went on. Everybody knows, it's no secret, that this was a job you were interested in. Do you still some hope someday to be penciling the lineup not just for one day but for a whole season?
Well, yes, John, I'd like to manage the Baltimore Oriole Baseball Club. There's no question about that, because as I've said before, and when Joe got the job here and I was in the running for it, I said that I would like to manage this ball club. And I still feel that way. I would like to manage this club. I got 29 years here, and I guess I'm an Oriole. And a lot of these guys played for me in the past, and I know the personnel here, I know the organization, and I guess this is my organization, and yes, someday, maybe I'll manage this ball club.
Well, it's your day today. Get them back on the winning track. Thanks a lot,
Thank you
Rip.
very much, John.
Get a win for them. Okay. Again, that's a situation. It's a situation that's been evolving for the last couple of days. It really only come to a head today because of all the rumors and all the innuendos. Everything did come to a head. Earl Weaver is back, and Jack Dawson brings us up to date on just how we got to where we are right now.
Jones, who had 12. Give the homestand a satisfactory rating up to the weekend anyway. The Orioles were 5-3, and 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox would have made it a 7-4 deal. The Red Sox swept the weekend, however, and capped it with that awful shellacking on Sunday. By Monday morning, things were shaking. The Orioles were off for a possible 3 in Detroit, and the club's top brass had their previously scheduled Tuesday status meeting pending. The team set that up with their 4th straight loss Monday night in Tiger Stadium. Apparently, the Williams-Peters meeting on Tuesday sealed it for Joe Altobelli. By Wednesday noon, the reports were circulating. Altobelli was out, they said, and Earl Weaver was seen breakfasting with Williams in Washington. Altobelli and the Orioles showed up for last night's game in Detroit, and so did a sizable percentage of the Western World sports reporting corps. What's going on, they wanted to know. Altobelli only knew what the reporters were telling him.
I really don't know how this thing started. I just know I picked up the phone some 30 or 40 times this afternoon and had to tell a lot of people in the media the same thing. I don't know what's going on.
By the time the night was over, the Orioles had absorbed their 5th straight loss. And with a great many more questions than answers, everybody came back to Baltimore. And then came Thursday. Joe Altobelli at the stadium at an early hour, and he still wanted to hear it from the people he worked for.
I can't tell you anything I don't know.
Are you expecting to see Hank real quick?
I would have loved to have seen him at 9:30 rather than waiting until 10:30.
Did they ask you to come in so they could talk to you?
Nobody asked me to.
You just want to get a damn answer, right?
I just think it's a natural thing for me to do.
That's the situation as it stands right now. Joe Altobelli is out. He is somewhere in Baltimore thinking over what his future possibilities will be. Earl Weaver will be back tomorrow night to manage the Baltimore Orioles. Tonight it's the Orioles against Milwaukee Brewers. We'll have the highlights at 11. Back to you.
Right, John. We'll see you back here for Nightside. It looks like the battle...
He was a broadcaster and gave that up to go into management?
No, that was
Forget
his
it.
father. His father did that.
Oh, that's
okay. Right. I think we've had enough from you. I'm going to tell T.C. Chin what you said, too.
Okay.
The R.C. Chin.
Give him the 9th at Bowie.
Go get him. The 9th at Bowie.
A lot of people want to know that. They don't care about baseball.
I know they do.
Where's the 9th at Bowie?
The 9th at Bowie.
Well, tell them at 11.
Here somewhere. It's 8-1. I remember that. Because I remember when I took it down, you said, oh, boy.
There it is, right there. Quick.
Yeah, no, 8-11-1. 8-11-1, 102-20, and the triple was a 17-52-80, and I don't know about the pick 6.
We're out of here. I know that.
Okay, we both are.
I hesitate to ask the two of you in the mood you're in, but who's on third tonight? Coaching third base, I mean.
I think maybe Rip, the first playing coach, one-day manager in the history of this franchise.
A lot of firsts going on out here.
Okay. We'll see one or both of you later on. Thank you. Rudy?
That should be fun.
That is.
There's room up next in just a few moments. It's ESPN's Horse Racing Weekly Down the Stretch with your host, Sharon Smith. In baseball news, what had been rumored became official today. The Baltimore Orioles have fired manager Joe Altobelli and replaced him with their former manager, Earl Weaver. Altobelli, or rather Weaver, will be the highest paid manager in baseball. Getting around $500,000 a year puts him over Billy Martin's salary. Martin gets around $400,000 a year from the Yankees. But Weaver says he'll be paid on a day-to-day basis, the way he requested. Altobelli, normally mild-mannered, was rather bitter today, and you can understand that as he was clearing out his locker in the locker room at the Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. He told the press as he was leaving for the racetrack, and I quote, "I thought this was a class organization, but I guess I was mistaken," unquote. Weaver takes over tomorrow night. Tonight, the Birds will meet Milwaukee with Cal Ripken Sr. being their interim manager. Round one to play.
Out at Memorial Stadium right now. How's the excitement out there?
Oh, Richard, what a day and what a night it's expected to be out here at Memorial Stadium tonight. The Orioles taking on Milwaukee, but the big news, Earl Weaver. The little man is back to guide the Orioles. We'll have that story, a lot more sports coming up next right here on Eyewitness Sports.
Hey, I guess it's 4, right?
Yes, or tomorrow for sure.
Yeah.
Paul Sherry's live at Memorial Stadium.
Thanks very much, Al. Saunders and Richard. Earl Weaver back as manager of the Baltimore Orioles. That happened, the official announcement late this afternoon in the news conference. They replaced Joe Altobelli with Earl Weaver, who had guided the Orioles for 15.5 seasons before retirement 3 years ago. But he will not be in uniform tonight because Cal Ripken Sr. is here, and Earl had a prior commitment. So Mr. Ripken doing the honors tonight. Earl will be in uniform tomorrow, ironically, against the same team that he ended his career with back in 1982, the Milwaukee Brewers. The Orioles, of course, lost that day to the Brewers on the last day of the regular season. This afternoon, Earl ended 2 days of heated speculation when he agreed to terms with Edward Bennett Williams. Ironically, it was Williams who 2 years ago promised Earl a position with the Orioles anytime he wanted one.
As long as you wish, there's a place for you with the Baltimore Orioles.
September 1982, Earl Weaver Day at Memorial Stadium. Owner Edward Bennett Williams pays tribute to Earl Weaver by saying Weaver's welcome back in the Orioles household at any time. Well, the time is now. Hank Peters announced Earl would return as the Orioles skipper and continue a career that has seen him win 6 division titles, 4 American League pennants, and 1 World Series title.
It was a difficult decision, but we did not like the direction in which the club seemed to be headed and decided that a change was necessary. At the same time, we felt that Earl, with his knowledge of the club, the organization, and most of the players, as well as his past record as a winner, was the most appropriate choice to replace Joe in this situation.
And I'm very happy and proud that he came back to this organization. He had many opportunities to manage, many opportunities, and I think he came back out of a sense of loyalty to this organization.
Okay, meanwhile, what about Joe Altobelli, the former manager of the Baltimore Orioles? Obviously not a happy man tonight. He, this morning, openly criticized Mr. Williams and Mr. Peters for keeping him in the dark about the managerial situation over the last couple of days. Altobelli, though, was told face-to-face of his status late this afternoon about being released. Altobelli was quoted as saying about the Baltimore Orioles, quote, "I thought this was a class operation. I guess I was wrong," unquote. Well, today...
Made before the game, Jack. I thought that it was important that I come to Baltimore with Hank and personally tell Joe Altobelli of that decision. And I did. It's a very painful, unpleasant experience, not one that I take any pleasure in at all. It was a very sad experience because I like Joe Altobelli very much. I admire him as a man. But it was the joint decision of the general manager, Hank Peters, and myself to relieve him yesterday.
All things considered, Joe Altobelli is only the 7th manager in Orioles history. Handled this situation the last couple of days with extreme class. In fact, his entire tenure as Orioles manager was conducted in a class manner. Despite the firing, Altobelli leaves with a .518 winning percentage and the satisfaction and glory Weaver, Rick Dempsey. Rick, your thoughts on the hiring today of Earl?
Well, it's not going to be bad for our ball club by any means. Under the circumstances of Joe being fired, it's not a good thing for anybody to take over under those circumstances because the club may need a little lift right now. Who knows? I personally feel that the lift has to come from the players themselves. We have to turn things around and start winning, and that's got to come out on the field, not from the manager.
Weren't they getting any spark from Altobelli?
Oh, well, certainly we were, but I just think that the players themselves, like I say, were not executing. It's not Joe's fault that we didn't get the 2-run double or strike out a guy when we had a 1-1 lead in the 9th. We were making too many mistakes, and it put a lot of pressure on Joe.
Okay, Rick Dempsey, catcher for the Baltimore Orioles. Rick, thanks very much for being on with us live. Meanwhile, believe it or not, there were other major sporting events happening this afternoon. In golf, for instance, the United States Open. It was round run at the Oakland Hills Country Club.
Is in the process. Now the Orioles are struggling in 4th place. They've lost 5 in a row. Weaver is coming back. First game tomorrow night.
The Orioles have made it official. Earl Weaver is on his way back to Baltimore to manage the Orioles.
Hello once again, everybody. Welcome back to the ESPN Sports Center along with Greg Gumbel. I'm Chris Berman, and yes, the Earl is back, which gives umpires something to have more headaches about in the American League East.
And what a surprise, too,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
I was really shocked.
Yeah, it was probably the worst-kept secret of the year. It began as a low rumble early yesterday with a radio report out of Baltimore, and by this morning it was roaring as most everyone was convinced the Orioles were about to change managers. On the outs is Joe Altobelli, who took over in 1983 and guided the O's to a World Series championship. Back in is the man whose shadow Altobelli could never erase in Baltimore with all the success in the world.
Earl Weaver has agreed to return as manager of the Orioles for the balance of the season, replacing Joe Altobelli. Contract agreement was reached at 12:30 this afternoon at Edward Bennett Williams' office in Washington. At the end of the year, the managing situation will be re-examined and a decision made relative to the future. Weaver, who coincidentally is in Baltimore with his wife Mariana to visit their daughter Kim, has a prior commitment tonight and will not be available for comment. He will be here for a 10 a.m. press conference tomorrow and will be in uniform tomorrow night. Cal Ripken Sr. will manage the club against the Brewers this evening. This is a quote: "We are sorry about relieving Joe Altobelli. It was a difficult decision, but we did not like the direction in which the club seemed to be headed and decided that a change was necessary."
Even before Hank Peters made the announcement, Joe Altobelli had a hunch and cleaned out his office, telling reporters, "You can't all be wrong." Altobelli does sound very bitter about the situation. He was quoted as saying, "I thought this was a class organization, but I guess I was sadly mistaken." What is clear is that the team has a world of talent, but does need a fire lit under it. Owner Edward Bennett Williams, who persuaded Weaver to return, reportedly as baseball's highest-paid manager, laid out about $11.5 million for 3 free agents before the season began, and doesn't feel he's getting his money's worth. The Orioles have lost 5 in a row and 7 of their last 11 games.
The combination of Earl Weaver and the Baltimore Orioles is synonymous with winning. In his 14.5 years as manager of the Orioles, Weaver's team finished lower than second only twice. 6 times, Weaver and the Orioles made it to postseason play. Their best year came back in 1970 when they beat the Cincinnati Reds in 5 games to win the World Series. That, of course, the World Series, which will always be known as the Brooks-Robinson Series. Of course, Weaver's stats, rather impressive, almost a winning percentage of .600. You see the wins and losses, and you see his postseason record as well from 1969 through 1974. Those 6 years, 5 of those years, the Orioles were in postseason play. George Grant has more on the love affair between Weaver and the city of Baltimore.
For 16 seasons, the Earl of Baltimore built a reputation that placed him at the top of the list in 2 categories: as a bench manager and as a thorn in the side of American League umpires. The feisty presence that he brought to the dugout was one of the reasons the city of Baltimore and Earl formed a mutual admiration society. When Weaver stepped down after the '82 regular season, Earl was showered with praise and a curtain call.
Well, the Baltimore organization has been tremendous. I've been with them 25 years, and they just kept producing major league ball players to make me look good. And I guess I'm blessed to be in a city that reacts to people that try. I'm talking about my players on the field and how well they treat their professional athletes here, whether you're having a good year, whether you're having a bad year. They've been wonderful to me, and they've been wonderful to our players ever since I've been here. And there's no way that I'll ever be able to thank the people of Baltimore enough for accepting me the way they have.
It was from the dugout to the broadcast booth for Weaver in '83 as he joined ABC for Monday night and World Series coverage, a job that at least kept him in baseball and visible.
Well, I enjoyed it tremendously. It brought me into major league ballparks all over the country. I got to see baseball games both on the cables and in major league cities. I got to visit some old friends on some of the ball clubs, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I doubt there's been a managerial opening in the last 2 years plus that Earl's name hasn't been mentioned as a candidate. But those close to Weaver knew the situation would have to be right. Big money, no interference from the front office, and a team that could contend. All of that this week added up to a return to Memorial Stadium, where Edward Bennett Williams hopes Earl can rekindle the memories of a pennant race. One thing is certain, tonight the word among umpires around the American League is get ready, because the Earl of Baltimore is back. George Grand, ESPN.
Thank you, George. Live coverage of... However, rumors stated that Earl was returning to the dugout for $500,000 a year over 3 years. Hank Peters denied that. He said that Earl is being put on the payroll for the remainder of this year, and at the end of the season they will examine all of their options as far as a manager goes. One thing is for certain, Joe Altobelli really isn't to blame for the Orioles' failures this year. They do have quality on the field. It's just that a man like Earl Weaver has the ability to come in and shake things up.
He does. It's interesting to note, Greg, that the Orioles are playing the ball game totally differently. There was a big departure from form when they signed their free agents, Lynn, Lacey, and Ossie, the past year. So now this is a very un-Oriole-like move. Canning a manager in mid-June when the team, it's not as if they're playing 400 or 350 ball. You pay the big bucks for the free agents. You change the stakes a little bit. And interesting to note the quotes that you had earlier about Joe Altobelli saying, geez, I thought this was a classy organization. I guess not. Kind of interesting coming from a man who has a lot of class, who, after all he did was win a couple of years ago the World Series, Altobelli.
That's just it, because, you know, Joe Altobelli's managerial abilities haven't changed in the 2 years that he won the World Series, just that the situations change around him, and that is part of the risk you take when you take on a job as a major league manager. Well, who is Derek DeRue, and what's he doing on a golf course? Well,
I agree with him. That's our report on World News tonight. I'm Peter.